Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, my name's Dr. Ian Phillips, and today we got a relatively interesting story for you guys. I was scrolling through Twitter, and if Twitter isn't depressing enough, given everything that's going on in this country, I mean, for God's sake, literally just every day it's something new. Like Trump just pulled out of the World Health Organization today. This is the average news day. In fact, that's probably a relatively slow news day, given the current state of affairs right now. Silver's at almost $100 an ounce. Gold's almost at $5,000 an ounce. Batshit crazy. The world is going into the dumpster, especially America. Now, it gets even worse, though, because I saw this little post here by the Sky News, and I almost had like a stroke when I read the damn thing. It's basically saying here that nearly 1/3 of kids cannot use books when starting school, and they try to swipe them like phones. Let that sink in for a second here. Kids are trying to swipe literal books like their phones. Now, this is coming out of the early years charity Kindred Squared, and they're going to do a survey every year, it sounds like, whereby teachers are polled on a lot of these different topics here. And, starting off, I just want to say the numbers have only gotten worse over the last 20 years. And so now, as if this wasn't already alarming, it almost seems as if this has crossed the point of no return here. 1/3 of kids are swiping books when they start school. I don't know in what world that is something that we can find acceptable as a society and do absolutely nothing about. Now, people are going to come up with their solutions and whatnot, saying, oh, well, the government is what got us in this mess with their public schooling. Public schooling is the problem, and therefore we need to start sending kids to charter schools and private schools. But I'm here to tell you today that is definitely not the goddamn answer, and nor is that something that we should be promoting as a society. And the reason for that here is it's not necessarily that public education is bad. Public education is great. In fact, the best talent is if you believe in a free market, like you're a Republican, for example, right? If you believe in the free market, who gets paid the most? Well, by far, it's public school teachers. It has not even close fucking charter school or private school teachers. It's always going to be public school teachers. Best talent goes into their extremely competitive jobs. Like people say there's teacher shortage. Doesn't exist. Anybody who says that, even if they're a teacher, they don't know what they're talking about. You just look at the actual data of people who apply. It's like 500 applicants. You have like 10 jobs. It's like, okay, well, there's not a fucking teacher shortage then. So don't tell me that there is. It's like maybe in like rural Wyoming, right? But it doesn't exist in most places. And one of the things that I can tell you for certain here is that if you are going to send your kid into these public schools, it's not that they're bad. It's that they're coming unprepared into the schools, and then the schools get demonized, and then they lose funding, and then maybe they do perform slightly worse than they would have in the past. But at the end of the day here, this is more a parental issue here, where kids are literally not being exposed to this early childhood literacy. So the children, when they're growing up, right? I mean, you try to read stories to them, right? You want to try to show them some basic sight words, right? Give them like little note cards with pictures on them and the word itself, right? And read it out to them, sound it out, make them sound it out as well. And just go through that. Like kids are almost like, I always compare kids to like parrots, right? They're literally like little parrots. And if you, their IQ will do the rest of the work there. Just feed them the words, try to have little conversations with them, try to read them stories, and the rest will come, right? But if you don't do that, right, because you're just, you want to be some fucking Gen Zer who's having babies, but you want to just stay on your goddamn iPhone all day and scroll TikTok. It's like, well, I got news for you, man. Your kid's not going to be able to read, and your kid's going to be left behind in these emerging markets here. I mean, the world is not going to stick around and wait for your kid to become literate. That's the last thing that's going to happen here. And, like over time, maybe some kids develop that literacy, right? But what I am saying here is that a lot of those kids, they're already at such a huge disadvantage that it becomes incredibly difficult for them to climb out of a hole. Teachers, they have standards, and they have to cover those standards. And the last thing that we can do is have to wait around and wait for everybody to master all these lower standards before we move on to higher standards. It's just not possible. It's just not going to happen, nor do we have the resources for it at schools. And so what I'm saying here is this is very bad news, and the parents are to blame. The parents are to blame. And so is society for not doing anything about this and prosecuting these parents, nor providing early childhood education for these kids at a much younger age. Because if the parent's not going to do the job, then it's the job of the state to step in. One of the things that we know, and my research was focused on antisocial behaviors in students and teachers' perceptions of those antisocial behaviors and how they can be remediated. One of the things that you'll learn right away here is that by about the age of 5, children start to become socialized. And one of the best possible things that you can do for them is send them to preschool. Because if the parents aren't socializing their kids properly, playing with them, teaching them rules, teaching them etiquette, trying to get them to interact with others in a fair and respectable manner, understanding the world has boundaries and rules and structure, and you usually do that through the lens of games. You play with the kids with games, and then they can learn that way. And which is why I'm a huge advocate of not actually teaching kids almost anything the first few years, and literally just trying to teach them how to, teaching, obviously you're going to teach them stuff, but teaching them how to play and interact with other people is way more important than necessarily just teaching them like straight up math as soon as they get to like kindergarten. It's like, it's an important skill, I guess, but it's not really what the crux of the issue is. The crux of the issue here is socialization. And if you're not socializing your kids, what's going to happen to them? It's like, well, most are going to probably be fine, right? Because there's a lot of kids here who are like, no matter what you do, they're probably going to turn out great. They're pretty pro-social by nature. Then there's like maybe like 30%, which is, like hit or miss, right? And then you got, but they'll probably end up being relatively fine. And then you got the, so they're like sporadically aggressive or antisocial. And then you have about, let's say roughly 30% here, who if their antisocial behavior is not remediated at a young age, well, then they're just cooked pretty much for the rest of their life here. And so preschool is a phenomenal thing, and high quality preschool too. I'm not talking about just daycare. I'm talking about actual preschool where the kids are learning and interacting and playing with peers in a respectful and responsible manner, with adults at the head of that, structuring these interactions with the children. And so in the event of this year, it's like preschool would have been a phenomenal thing to help remediate these massive gaps that we're going to see with the large subset of the population here. Whereas again, lots of kids, nearly one third of kids here are not going to be able to use books correctly. I believe the study actually cites 28%. And so when you read this study right here on screen, again, you got the little baby holding the book, right? Just to sort of represent this, 28%, they incorrectly use the books, right? They're going to be swiping. They're going to be tapping their books because that's what they think. That's what they think life is, right? They're going to be tapping and swiping on TikTok. I remember seeing a kid before, and I won't obviously disclose who exactly it was, but it was somebody that I know personally. And they handed their kid a phone while they were in a little baby stroller, and the kid was like probably not even 2 years old yet. Maybe I don't even think they were like 2, and they literally had a phone in their hand and they're swiping and tapping right on the screen, literally getting rid of advertisements that popped up. And I was like, holy shit, dude. Like that is bad, man. That should not be happening, dude. You're exposing kids to that just dopamine hit out the wazoo at such a young age. Like these kids are not gonna be able to focus for shit. And the last thing that they're going to want to do is read when they can just watch a TikTok. I can assure you that. Yo, it's hard for me to even read today, and I'm like a nerd. Like I've made it to the highest echelons of education. Like it isn't hard for me to read, right? Because social media is so bloody addicting, and then now you're just gonna give that to kids, right? Because that's where it obviously stems from. I mean, the kids are literally tapping the books. I mean, so like they probably see words on there. They don't know what the hell the words mean, but they're probably just tapping because they think it's probably gonna move. And it's like, oh my God, like that's bad, especially by the time they're joining kindergarten, which is roughly around age 5. Now, that's bad enough, but the study gets worse. So it's not just that; it actually gets worse. And it says about 26% are not going to be toilet trained. You're gonna have frequent toilet mishaps, not just occasional accidents, and then 28% cannot actually eat or drink independently. They don't know how to eat or drink independently, and they're literally going to be in like a preschool type setting, or like a preschool kindergarten type setting. Now, as if that isn't bad enough here, one of the things that I want to stress here is that these kids who are coming into this, a lot of this stuff could be remediated if we started school just younger. I've personally been under the presumption that maybe school shouldn't last all day, but what we should do is make it so that way kids who are roughly around age 3 and onwards should be experiencing some type of school in some capacity or some manner. So that way they're sort of getting those necessary skills, and parents should be brought in on that educational process. Like if you're going to have a kid, it's like, dude, you have no choice but to really help your kid learn and navigate some of these skills. So really bringing parents into that fold and just like, like you got to make it so that way it's like, dude, you're going to be like the black sheep if you don't. It's like, dude, I'm going to fucking rip on you, right? It's like you're a kid. You didn't teach your kid how to, use these basic sight words yet. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, right? Call them out, right? Because that's what needs to happen. Because otherwise these kids are going to be left behind. And it's extremely unfortunate. And it's extremely damaging to their education and their well-being moving forward. So it's something that is obviously not good here. It's something that I obviously think that we're not on the right track for. in terms of offering those services. I mean, preschool, for God's sake, I mean, like, it's the last thing that is probably ever going to be mandated by the state. It's extremely expensive on the private side. Nobody's affording this. Nobody's affording this here. Where it's free, the waiting lists are so long that it's like hit or miss as to whether or not you'll get on. You usually got to sign up quick. But what if you don't sign up quick? It's like, what? Then your kid just screwed. Your kid's not going to learn how to properly navigate the world now. It's like, this is an issue, right? And then other little things too. In society, we just don't value education as much as they do in like a lot of these countries that kick our ass in terms of education. Nor do we do a lot of just really basic stuff like putting subtitles on screens. Like you would think like such a minor thing wouldn't maybe necessarily have that much of a difference, but it does, because people are exposed to screens all day long. And so when you mandate subtitles, or at least your parents smart enough to put them on, your kid's going to be a lot more literate than those who aren't putting on those subtitles. So the fact of the matter remains here is that we're doing things backwards, and that we really need to step up here and sort of, as a community, I think we need to start collectively engaging these parents and these kids throughout this learning process, because they're clearly not going to do it themselves there. I mean, we're talking about 1/3 of the country, a little less than 1/3. And I think and again, this is just one study, right? And there's not a lot of data concerning some of these very specific metrics that we're looking at here, such as, incorrectly using books, or, not becoming toilet trained when they enter school, or, not eating or drinking independently here. But having said that, while I think the numbers are a little bit better than what the study's probably citing, it's not much better. It's not looking good. I can tell you that. It's not looking good at all. I was just trying to pull up some numbers really quickly before I started this video. And I believe that using a large U.S. data set of kindergarten dibbles, results from the end of 2024, 2025, 70% of kindergartners finished at or above benchmark on track, while 30% finished below benchmark, including 20% well below benchmark, far behind / needs intensive intervention. Like, that's bad, dude. Like, when you have 20% who are like well below the benchmark, that's a problem. And those people should not be moving on to the next grades now. It has nothing to do with No Child Left Behind. Yeah, it's the mentality of No Child Left Behind. But, No Child Left Behind has been gone for years now, probably over a decade. And so, like, it's not necessarily that fault. We're under new, like, the Every Student Succeed Act. Like, things are different. But the fact of the matter remains here is people are still terrified to hold your kids back because they're like, look, these kids are maybe going to become mal-socialized, or have some worse life outcomes. And it's like, well, they were already going to have worse life outcomes because look at where they're at, right? You're already in the bottom 20%, right? You think things are going to be good for them, regardless if you hold them back, push them forward? It's like, no, right? So one of the best things you probably could do is give them that reality check, and they're not going to understand it as a kid. But as an adult, you can provide some really intensive interventions, and maybe you can help them. But unfortunately, as a society, we don't do that. And that's the last thing that we even consider. And so, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. It's a sad world that we live in. But if you did enjoy the video here, did enjoy the little bit of a conversation concerning this topic, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much for 411 subscribers. I'm Dr. Ian Phillips, and we'll talk to you later. Peace.